It began with a text message, brief, icy, and delivered with perfect precision. 7:43 p.m. Thursday. Family meeting tonight. 8 p.m. attendance required. This is urgent. Dad. I stared at the screen's glow, a humorless smile tugging at my mouth. Urgent. Fascinating choice of vocabulary coming from them. 14 months had passed since my wedding. 14 months since those invitations went out. Since my phone filled with polite little excuses and every person related to me decided I wasn't worth showing up for. My sister Rachel had sent, sorry, can't make it. Backyard weddings just aren't our vibe. My brother Marcus didn't bother softening his words, not worth the drive for such a basic ceremony. Mom emailed a short, sugar-coated jab, a casual outdoor wedding doesn't align with our family standards. I hope you understand. And my father. He didn't reply at all. That day, beneath the setting sun, I said I do in front of 50 guests, friends, co-workers, neighbors. People who chose to be there. We stood under white roses and warm golden string lights hanging between old oak trees. It was beautiful. It was mine. And not a single blood relative witnessed it. Now, 14 months later, they suddenly had something urgent. And I already knew the reason. That morning, the Lifestyle Channel aired an episode of Most Spectacular Estates. And whose property opened the show? Mine. They filmed every restored room, each hand-carved doorway, every polished inch of my 12-acre lakefront estate. They revealed its $5.5 million valuation, interviewed me about buying it as a distressed listing for $1.8 million 3 years earlier, and even showed clips of my wedding, yes, that same so-called backyard ceremony in the gardens. The segment blew up. By noon, I'd received more messages than I had in the last 3 years combined. Old acquaintances, distant relatives, ex-classmates, all suddenly overflowing with pride. And of course, my family. So I sent one simple reply, I'll be there. At 7:58 p.m., I pulled into my parents' driveway, my headlights sweeping across their perfectly sculpted hedges. The garage looked like a showroom, Rachel's Mercedes, Marcus's BMW, Aunt Linda's Lexus. Amazing how urgent gatherings became well attended when money floated in the air. I stepped out, heels tapping crisply along the stone path, leather briefcase in hand. Mom opened the door before I knocked, her voice coated in sweetness and shame. Victoria, you made it. Everyone's waiting. The living room was packed already. Mom, Dad, Rachel and her husband Brad, Marcus and his fiancée Jennifer, Aunt Linda, Uncle George, Cousin Stephanie all arranged in a perfect half-circle, like I'd walked into a tribunal. Aunt Linda grinned. There she is, our TV celebrity. Your estate is absolutely stunning, sweetheart. I didn't return the smile. That's funny, I said quietly. Last year you told me I'd thrown away my savings on a collapsing house in the middle of nowhere. Her smile twitched. Dad's voice sliced through the room. Sit down, Victoria. We need to discuss something. I'll stand, I replied, placing my briefcase onto the coffee table. Your message said it was urgent. So go on. Marcus leaned forward, oozing fake warmth. We watched the episode. The place looks incredible. Appreciate it, I answered, keeping my tone flat. Dad cleared his throat. $5 million, he said slowly. That's a hefty purchase for someone who was supposedly living above her budget. The comment struck me with a strange familiarity, the same patronizing tone he'd used 2 months before my wedding when he lectured me about being reckless with money. Mom's voice softened, coated in worry and manipulation. Sweetheart, we just want to make sure you're not drowning financially. You must have taken out a huge mortgage. A place like that would bury anyone your age. Why would you assume I'm in debt? I asked. Uncle George snorted. Because nobody in their 20s buys an estate like that outright. You've got to be mortgaged to the ceiling. That's why you had that tiny wedding, right? Tight funds. I almost laughed. Is that what you believe? Rachel's voice shifted into that sugary fake concern. We're not judging, Vic. We just want to help. Brad thinks it'd be smart to sell before the market dips. Brad bobbed his head enthusiastically. I actually know a fantastic agent. We could list it next week. I raised my hand, cutting him off. Then, slowly, I opened my briefcase. The metallic click of the clasp echoed in the quiet room. Before we go any further, I said, steady and controlled, let me ask something simple. Why didn't any of you show up to my wedding? Silence. Not one of them would look at me. I sent invitations 6 months early, I continued. Called each of you personally. Every last one of you found a reason my wedding wasn't worth attending. That's not fair, Rachel protested. We told you it wasn't special enough. You said it didn't feel like a real celebration, that it was too plain. I looked at each of them one by one. So tell me what changed between then and now. Marcus shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. We didn't know. Didn't know what? I snapped. That the rental cottage was actually my estate? That the simple backyard ceremony took place in gardens now featured in 3 national magazines? You never told us, Rachel said defensively. I invited you to visit more than once. Mom said she was too busy. You said it was too far of a drive. Marcus never even called me back. Dad's jaw clenched. We're not here to rehash the past. We're talking about your financial situation. My financial situation? I repeated. Then I set a document on the table, thick, pristine paper. That's the deed. The estate is completely paid for. No mortgage. Uncle George snatched it up, scanning fast. His face drained of color. Free and clear. You actually own it outright? Yes. I placed another document down, last month's appraisal. It's now valued at $6.2 million. The show bumped the price by another $700,000 overnight. My dad's fingers shook just a little. How did you pay for all this? I earned it, I said, pulling out another stack of papers, neat, organized, exact. This is my company, North Star Property Development. We renovate historic estates and oversee high-end properties. Marcus leaned closer. This says your company is worth $23 million, 24.7 this quarter. The silence that hit after that was thick enough to taste. My supposedly simple wedding, I said quietly. It came to $180,000. The flowers alone were $15,000. The catering was done by a Michelin-starred chef. And the music? A string quartet straight from Carnegie Hall. Rachel's jaw dropped. But you said it was casual. Casual meant intimate, I answered. 50 guests. No gaudy ballroom. Not cheap. Not basic. My mom's voice wavered. Why didn't you tell us? I did, I replied evenly. You just ignored it. I said I was restoring a historic estate, you called it a rundown shack. I told you I was launching a business, Dad said I was pretending to be an entrepreneur. I invited you to my wedding, yet you decided it wasn't special enough. I unlocked my phone and held up a picture. Me in my Vera Wang gown. Daniel's arm around my waist. Sunlight pouring through the oak trees. White roses glowing under golden light. Aunt Linda let out a breath. That's your wedding? The basic little ceremony you all skipped, I said. I swiped again. Chandeliers, a 7-tier cake, a vintage Rolls-Royce by the lake. I didn't hide a thing. You just couldn't look past your own pride. Dad's tone softened. If we had known. I laughed, short, sharp. See? That's exactly it. You would have shown up only if it sounded expensive enough. Not because it meant something to me. Mom's face folded. That isn't true. Oh, it is, I said, voice turning cold. Remember Marcus's engagement party? Cheap conference room at the Hampton Inn, cake from a grocery store. I flew in from Seattle, brought a $500 gift, and stayed until the end. Marcus's cheeks reddened. That was different. How? I snapped. Because that was your engagement. But mine wasn't worth even 2 hours of your time. Rachel stepped forward, flustered. That's not fair. What isn't? I shot back. Skipping my wedding? Acting superior? You should feel guilty. She shook her head. We didn't know you were successful. And that's the whole point, I said, voice rising. I'm your sister. Your support should come from love, not because you finally saw me on TV. Clear's throat. Again, the room fell into that fragile, glass-thin silence. Finally, I breathed out and reached into my briefcase. You want numbers? Fine. I laid the deeds on the table like cards in a game. Riverside Property, 3.8 million. Willow Creek Manor, 2.1. Hartley Building, 4.2. Riverside Inn, 1.9. Their eyes went wide, but I didn't stop. Garden District Homes, 6.7. Lakefront Cottages, 2.3. The Victorian Estate, 3.4. Uncle George leaned toward the papers, mumbling as he tried to total them. That's over 25. No, I corrected calmly, closer to 29 million. I placed the final sheet down, my portfolio summary. Total assets, 52.3 million. Net worth, 44.2. Jennifer's voice came out in a breathless murmur. 44 million? Yes, I replied, almost casually. And on my own, I'm sitting at about 31. I looked straight at my father. Not too shabby for someone you said was just pretending to be an entrepreneur, huh, Dad? He looked as if I'd struck him. I kept my tone even, almost bored. Next month, Forbes is putting me on their cover, Young Entrepreneurs in Historic Preservation. I snapped my briefcase closed. So, why am I here? No one said a word. You saw me on TV, I said quietly. You realized I wasn't the disappointment you decided I was. And now you want access. That's not true, Mom began. Don't lie. My voice was pure steel. Dad, say the real reason. He collapsed into the truth, shoulders sinking. The business is struggling. We need investors. When we saw the show, we thought maybe. How much? I asked, flat and emotionless. Uncle George jumped in before my father could respond. $500,000 for the dealership expansion. And you thought I'd just hand it over? Rachel leaned closer, eyes softening, tone pleading. We messed up. We know that. But we're family. Families help each other. I held her gaze for a long, silent moment. Her words sounded honest. But honesty that appears after success never feels the same as honesty given when you're nobody. Do you know what Daniel and I did on our wedding night? I asked softly. We wandered through those gardens at midnight, and he held me while I cried because my own family couldn't be bothered to show up for the most important day of my life. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Daniel's family was there, I continued quietly. All of them. 6 states. His 87-year-old grandmother came with her walker. Because that's what real family does. I lifted my briefcase. And you know what else? Not one of them asked about the price tag. Not one tried to judge whether it was fancy enough. They just showed up. Victoria, please, Dad rose to his feet. The $500,000 you're begging for? I said. I spent more than that on my wedding. The one you couldn't be bothered to attend. I let that settle like dust in a silent room. I could write that check right now. Their eyes lit with hope. But I'm not going to. Hope vanished. Because you don't help family, I said coldly. You help family when it's convenient, when it benefits you. I walked to the door. I figured this out 14 months ago, standing at my reception, staring at the empty table where all of you were supposed to be. Please, Mom's voice cracked. We're sorry. You're sorry now. But not when you RSVP'd no. Not when I called you the night before, sobbing. Not during 14 months of silence. I pulled up a photo on my phone, the table set aside for them, and laid it on the table. 8 empty chairs. A place card labeled family. Perfectly untouched plates. I set this up because I hoped, stupidly, that you'd surprise me. Daniel wanted to remove it so I wouldn't get hurt, but I insisted. Mom was openly crying now. Every guest saw that empty table. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I picked up my phone. But Daniel's family? They moved over. They filled those empty chairs. By the end of the night, that table was overflowing with people who chose to love me. That's beautiful, Stephanie whispered. It taught me something, I said. Family isn't blood. It's whoever shows up when it counts. Victoria, Dad's voice cracked. The business will collapse. Is that what you want? I paused at the doorway. You know what I wanted. I said softly. I wanted my family at my wedding. I wanted Mom helping with my dress. I wanted Dad to walk me down the aisle. I wanted Rachel as my maid of honor. Marcus giving some ridiculous toast. I turned back toward them. I wanted what Daniel's family gave without hesitation. I exhaled. No. I don't want your business to fail. But I refuse to be the ATM you remember only when you're broke. It's not like that. If that show hadn't aired, would we even be having this conversation? Silence. That's what I thought. I left the room as their panic erupted behind me. My phone buzzed. Daniel, how did it go? Exactly like I expected, I typed. Coming home. Making your favorite dinner. I love you. I love you too. On the drive home, the messages poured in. Rachel, please rethink this. Marcus, can we talk? Mom, you're breaking my heart. Dad, money has made you cruel. I replied to Dad. No. Money just made you finally see me. That's not the same thing. Then I blocked all of them. I pulled up to my $6.2 million estate, fully paid off, filled with memories of the perfect wedding they skipped. Daniel waited on the front steps, framed in warm light. How was it? He asked. Eye-opening. He wrapped his arms around me. I'm proud of you for knowing your worth. Inside, the house smelled like home and fresh flowers. Maisie, our dog, sprinted over, tail wagging. Wedding photos lined the walls, proof of how beautiful that day really was. One last text came from an unknown number. Victoria, this is Aunt Linda. Some of us truly want to make things right. Not for money. Because we miss you. I saved her contact. Prove it. Show up. Not for what I have, but for who I am. When's your next Sunday dinner? This Sunday. 6 p.m. Come alone. I'll be there. That Sunday, Aunt Linda arrived with flowers and a homemade pie. No favors. No schemes. Just real conversation and sincere apologies. It was a beginning. As for the rest, I haven't spoken to them again. My company just wrapped a $12 million hotel restoration. Forbes ran the feature. Daniel and I are celebrating our second anniversary in Italy. And I haven't missed them once. Because that empty wedding table taught me something. The people who show up when there's nothing to gain, they are your real family. Everyone else is just related by blood. And blood is thinner than